So 5 years ago, I had the most fascinating lesson I have ever conducted. Because when my student came to me in that lesson, he was hitting shots like this. Way to the right, really high, really weak. And this was all because of a misconception he had on how he was starting the downswing. And just one small tweak that we made resulted in shots like this, where they were going way more penetrating, tiny little draw if anything, and a ton more distance, and repeatedly like that. And from what I remember, of course, because it was 5 years ago, he gained 32 yards in just one small move, which actually helped him with 3 different areas of the golf swing. And this is something I commonly see all the time with players. So let's get into it. So, okay, what my student was doing in that lesson, he was pulling the shaft down to start the downswing, which is such a common thing that a lot of golfers are trying to do. Now, when we pull that shaft down, what will generally happen is that left wrist will start to go into extension. So we can see here with the hack motion that I've got on here, as soon as I start to pull down that shaft, you can see at the top there, almost in really neutral, and then going down, we can see I'm in that extended position. We can see around 37. So that's pretty extended, 36 now. So what does that do? When we go into pulling the shaft down, that giving you a lot of left wrist extension or cupping. Look at the shaft angle, steep as a Jeep. So it's really going to steepen the shaft, but also what does it do? Opens the club face. What was my student doing? Hitting it way, way right. So when we see a player who steepens the shaft and opens it from this pull down, resulting in cupping of the left wrist, we'll see them start to stand up to be able to, one, re-shallow that shaft. Standing up is a shallowing mechanism late in the golf swing. But we'd also see them have to really quickly fire their hand so they have a jump stall and a flip. So let's look at the ball flight here when I try to do that movement of really pulling that shaft down. Big extension of that wrist. That was absolutely horrendous. I fatted it as well. So as we can see there with the hack motion, we can see, so I really try to exaggerate it there because I normally get the left wrist into a bit of flexion, but you can see at impact +5. So definitely extending at the top. Just the intent of me trying to pull down that shaft, +24. When you're in the plus, that means you are cupped and extended there. So that's where there's so many timing elements, and most players might have the capability of quickly firing the hands, but my student never did that. He never squared it up. He always hit it out towards the right, pretty much every single time, as we can see there. So what we did to be able to fix this, now, because he was hitting the ball so far right, I wanted to more address immediately the left wrist. Because if we could fix that left wrist and get it into some flexion, coming down in that downswing, we would immediately get him playing better golf, because that will get that club face square and that will enable him to be able to turn. So I didn't necessarily talk about concepts for how to start the downswing. I wanted to immediately get him into a spot where he could then play better golf straight away, because he was in a spot of bother with his rounds. He was not liking how he was playing. He was wanting to give up the game. But this is where the amazing thing happened. Just trying to get that left wrist, as we could see there from that shot, into a lot more flexion, he started to get the hands not dropping down. They actually moved on more of a down and out pattern in the downswing. So that immediately got the club a little bit more in front of him, less steep and standing up, because that bowing of the left wrist also helped him shallow out the golf club, square the face, club more out in front. That means green light to turn. And my student did that instinctively. And here was me at the beginning of the lesson thinking that my student didn't have much athleticism because he couldn't time up that club face. He wasn't athletically reacting. But then as soon as we got this little feel that we're going to talk about here of adding in some flexion of that left wrist, as we can see there, definitely getting some flexion happening, shallowed out the club shaft, squared the face, enabled him just to rotate. And just that then pure want of trying to hit the ball to target got him turning and matching up that club face nicely. And that was just one small tweak of trying to get that left wrist to bow. There was less pull down, just absolutely everything looked way, way better there. So we did do a drill to be able to get this really into the swing after we knew that it was a winner of a thing to do. And if you want one of these hack motions to be able to measure what you're doing with your left wrist angles. It's a link down in the description, or at HackMotion use the code JChown in capital letters to get 5% off. Okay, so here's the feel and the drill. So the feel to start off with was curling the knuckles down towards the ground. So that's where for my student, I really wanted him to get an extreme feel here, because even though he went into flexion and bowing with the left wrist, it was only very, very slight. It wasn't a tremendous amount like a Dustin Johnson. It was only very slight, but we had to feel like we were really moving it into flexion to be able to do it, to avoid that cup pull down. So that's where we felt like knuckles curling down towards the ground. And as you can see here, that is very, very extreme. And like we said, we just tried to then react to the target, shallow the shaft, squared the face, kept him down, and kept him moving through the shot, really feeling that curling down of the wrist. So for anyone out there struggling with cupping the left wrist, you've got to exaggerate it. You've got to really exaggerate doing the opposite. So, because you will very unlikely actually get it really bowed. Most of you will try to do that and you'll get it flat, which can work just fine. So that's our feel, just that simple little tweak. Other than that, here's a drill. So this is a drill I absolutely love. Talk about this quite a lot on the channel. So let me put my spare old glove on. Not a golfer who wears gloves, because they always split for me. Just in my thumb there, as you can see. But what we did, we got his glove, we got a tee, and then what we did, we put that tee just in the front of the glove here. So ultimately, if he was to pull down the shaft, he would then jab this tee here into his forearm. It would hurt. So that's where for us, we don't want to do that. We don't want to feel the pain. So what we tried to do with a drill to where he could go away and practice nice and efficiently was to get a little bit of space between the tee and the forearm. That would get that curling down knuckles feel, which I told him to do also along with that. Still try to curl the knuckles down, create some space between the tee and the forearm. And that is absolutely great. Like I said, that's what created all that cascading effect. His body started to turn more going through as a result. Curling down, getting space between the tee and the forearm. Really, really nice there. So absolutely really simple of a drill. That can make a big, big difference. Now, what really fascinated me the most about this lesson is, even though we were working on one component there, which was just the left wrist, at how many other of the components it fixed as well. Because typically, you wouldn't go about fixing a pull down by just changing wrist angles. You would try to, of course, do anti-pull down type of feelings, getting the downswing started correctly. But this is where it shows that every golfer is different. Every golfer will react to things slightly, you know, individual wise. So that's where, when you know your problem with the golf swing, that's where experiment with some stuff. You can have multiple ways to fix a problem. And that's where this, just from that one, me wanting him to immediately get that ball going straighter by having that better left wrist angle, just gave us all that other stuff for free nicely. So this drill be a great one to work on if you're struggling with it. So if you enjoyed this video, click that like button. And if you want more golf instruction just like this, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell button too to be notified every time I put out a video.